ADAPT ABC program stands for Activity-Based Curriculum. These are exercises designed to educate the human body on how it's designed to move. So they're not exercises that are designed for fitness purposes. It's the critical movement necessary to maintain the efficiency of the muscles associated with the joints they're attached to. These are movements that the human body has to go through if you want to ensure that the human body can work correctly. And our environment 20, 30, 40 years ago would provide the necessary stimulus for us to move this way, climbing over fences, crawling under things. That's why crawling is so important as young children. But today our environment doesn't support that type of movement because we're much more sedentary proportionally than we used to. So these exercises are so critical to put those joints in their aligned position to maintain all of the function of the human body. The 5 essential movements that we've designed for a classroom setting are created to put the body in all the necessary positions for optimal circulation, optimal muscular involvement in terms of the opposing muscles, so that the front of your muscles and the back part of your muscles can work together to take your joints to their full range of motion, to negate any of the aspects from sitting from a long period of time. We're trying to get the chair out of the body, and these 5 moves are designed to do that. All right, so the first essential that we're going to be demonstrating is called active elbows, and it's designed to maximize the function of the shoulder blade. And a lot of people ignore that aspect because they really think of the arm, but you realize that the shoulder blade itself is the anchor point for all the muscles and function of the arm and all the joints. So when we sit, we tend to round our shoulders, our back becomes extended, and those muscles stay there for long periods of time because we'll move our arms and hands, but we won't move our shoulder blades. So we'll lose the ability to fully articulate or move those shoulder blades. So active elbows reintroduces the relationship between the upper arm and the shoulder blade and upper spine, so that those muscles don't become dormant and lose the ability to move that critical bone, the shoulder blade. All right, the next essential movement is called overhead extension lunges. One of the things that we lose the quickest is the ability for each leg to move independent. So you have the pelvis and you have each leg that moves independently, that's supposed to move independently. That's when we walk. But when we're sitting, both legs or femurs are in one position in relationship to the pelvis for an extended period of time. So those muscles become tight and atrophied, and then when you go to stand up, you lose that relationship between the head of the femur or the thigh bone and the movement of the pelvis itself. So then your spine, your lower back, or your knees make up for that lack of motion. So we lose that critical component, putting the other joints into a vulnerable position. If you could only do one exercise to counter the act of sitting, this would be the ideal exercise. So the next essential movement is standing backstroke. The ability for each arm to move independent of the other in opposing directions. It's similar to the active elbows in terms of trying to get that shoulder blade to maximize its efficiency in relationship to the arm, but it's in a different plane of movement now. So trying to maximize the length of the front of one arm while maximizing the length of the back of the opposing arm. Plus it gives you the added benefit of coordinating your right side and your left side, which helps with the brain itself and learning how to communicate one side to the other. That's why crawling is so critical to walking, because it teaches your right side and your left side to coordinate with each other. The next essential movement are called hurdlers. Much like the static lunges that we did earlier, this exercise is designed to emphasize the independent movement of each hip and leg, but in a much more dynamic fashion. One of the unique features of the hip is that it's designed to move in every direction possible, but we rarely use our hip in those dynamic angles. So the goal is this exercise works on the rotation rather than the linear front to back motion of the static lunges. This is another critical aspect of how that hip is designed to function, to take pressure off the back, ideal alignment of the spine, as well as knee and ankle health. So the ability to rotate each hip independently is a function that we lose incredibly fast, that's essential to taking pressure off all the other joints of the body. And the fifth essential is cats and dogs. The importance of cats and dogs is to align the spine and all the muscles in the front of the spine and the back of the spine, because a lot of times, especially the muscles in the back of the spine, become dormant, atrophied, and very tight from all the sitting that we do. And once we lose the alignment of our spine, all of our critical functions of our body can be interrupted with oxygen, circulation, our nerves. So doing cats and dogs will maintain the muscles between the front and the back of the body, and thus keeping the alignment of the spine in its ideal position. There are many optimal times to use the ADAPT Essentials routine. The most obvious is when kids become very fidgety, when you can tell that their bodies are starting to take over and they've lost the ability to sit down and really concentrate. That's an instinct to move. That's built into us, especially when we're young, because that's how we grow and that's how we develop those muscular structures. So feed that animal. Don't try to suppress that fidgety, caged animal that is having a hard time concentrating. Stand up, do the 4 or 5 minutes of essential movements. That'll establish that need for the body to move, and then you'll be able to reestablish an environment to be able to sit down and really focus on the academic environment that you're trying to work on. There's another very specific time to use the 5 essentials. It's not just when the bodies become fidgety and they're having a hard time moving, it's when they become dormant, when they become lethargic, and all of a sudden you feel like you're losing them, they're kind of falling asleep. It's more than just circulation, it's awareness. It's a combination of getting that blood flow to all the different areas of the body, as well as waking up that cognitive awareness in the brain. So there's 2 great times to use it. 1, when becoming fidgety and their body's trying to take over, and 2, if they're starting to become lethargic and falling asleep. Both those situations, this routine is designed to put you back into that optimal situation for learning. So the ADAPT Brain Break routine is designed to maximize the cognitive function of the brain. And one of the main functions of the brain is to relate and drive the human body, to assess stimulus outside the human body and then translate that to muscular movement. So if you touch something hot, the sensory input goes to the brain tells the muscles what to do, pull the arm away. That's a function of the brain. Anytime that we sit for long periods of time where we're only doing one linear aspect of how the brain functions in terms of incorporating information, the rest of the brain can and will become dormant over time, because the body is designed to conserve energy. So if you're not using it, it'll turn it off. So the goal, especially with young kids, is to maximize the cognitive ability of that brain so that they're performing at the highest level. So what we're trying to do is reintroduce the relationship between the brain and the human body so that their brain is fully aware. The first time you ever ride a bike, or the first time you ever perform any type of activity, your entire brain is turned on because it doesn't understand or doesn't know yet what part of the brain it has to use. So creating that environment will maximize the learning capacity for these young kids. So the first exercise in our brain break is hand-leg opposites. One of the most critical features of the human brain is we're dominant on one side. When we're really young, we learn to use one side of our body more than the other. If you watch a little baby or a little kid walk upstairs, they'll walk with one leg at a time. And the goal is to not increase the dominance of one side of the brain over the other. We want to narrow that gap, and that really maximizes the efficiency of the brain. So by doing hand-leg opposites, where they have to coordinate the upper body of their right side and the lower body of their left side, both sides of their brain have to be able to communicate on how to use those muscles in a balanced format. And the balance comes from the muscles working together even. It has nothing to do with athletic ability or talent. So as the body becomes aware of its environments, like the first time you stepped on an uneven surface, the brain has to become aware of that uneven surface, and then it translates to the muscles what to do. So that also maximizes the awareness of the brain. So just by standing up and putting your hand on the chairs and having to do that balanced movement, the brain will become awake in order to accomplish that specific balanced task. So the second exercise is skipping. Real basic, very relaxed. I call it Sesame Street skipping because it's really in the nature of more of a song in your head than a drill for a sport. It should be very relaxed. The idea is to be able to coordinate the right side and the left side of the body, as well as have your feet leave the ground so that your brain has to find the ground again. So it's more of a coordinated aspect. So it's just a different function within the brain in terms of its proprioception, which is where your brain is aware of the body and what's going on. So it's the next step in dynamic movement from the hand-leg opposites. All right, so the last exercise in our brain break routine are full squats to get the full range of motion of the hip. And the unique thing that we add to it is having to close our eyes, because our bodies inherently use our eyes to cheat as we walk and decide how we want to move. So when you close your eyes, your brain has to become dependent on just its relationship with the specific muscles. They can't use the horizon to decide to use more of your left side or your right side because you're uneven or you're tilting. So it's the ultimate in terms of the relationship between the brain and the body. So as we've already introduced coordinated movement, we've introduced proprioceptive and plyometric movement. And now we're just maximizing that relationship, so the brain has to be on full awareness to be able to do this simple movement. The ADAPT brain break routine has multiple uses, but the two most effective are, one, to wake the brain up. If you really want to maximize the awareness and function, almost like a warm-up for the brain, so starting going into a test, transitioning from a recess to a sitting environment where you have to be very academic, it's a great way to create that initial awareness. Another time is if you've been concentrating for long periods of time and you kind of have to like just flush the brain out. You're too detail oriented. You're overthinking things, because if you're in that academic world where you're really concentrating on a specific topic, if you have to make the brain communicate with the muscles, it will allow that, what we call as a reset. It's almost like rebooting the computer. So in the middle of a long test period, if it's over an extended period of time, depending on the age group, break that testing up with doing this brain break routine and then going back to that academic environment, and that you'll really maximize that cognitive ability to concentrate.